Welcome to the Finest Women in Real Estate. I'm your host, Michelle Limon, and we've got some of the finest women and men in real estate for you today. We're going to bring you some experience that you need to know in regards to selling and buying a house that involves solar and maybe some plumbing and maintenance repairs. With me today, I have Mary Ann Chanthala. She's a realtor with Big Block Realty. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Mary Ann Chanthala with Big Block Realty, serving Southern California, San Diego, East County, South County, and I am a dual agent, but I represent buyers and listing.
Buyers and sellers, both, right? So dual agent means you represent both sides. And then we have Kimberly Whitfield, who's the co-founder of Solar Brokers, LLC. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks for having me, Michelle. I'm the co-founder of Solar Brokers. We basically help to educate homeowners on what solar looks like for them. I also deal a lot with real estate agents, so I can help the real estate agents navigate this journey. Sometimes it's a super fun journey and sometimes it's not, so I'm here. It's always good for the homeowner, but I'm here to help the real estate agents navigate the process.
Well, fantastic. Thanks, Kimberly, for being with us. And then we have Gary Rodgers, the sole proprietor, owner of GR Handyman Services, and you really specialize in plumbing, right?
Yeah, I do. I've been plumbing for about 7 years now, and I'm kind of breaking into the rest of the handyman stuff, but mainly focus on plumbing.
So by the end of this, you'll probably build a house.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm meeting a lot of great people that can help me. So,
fantastic. Yeah. So what we're going to talk about right now is if you are a seller and you're selling your house, how these things work between solar and plumbing. So Mary Ann, when you're representing a seller that needs to sell their house that has solar on it or might need some plumbing, what do you look for? Walk us through how you navigate through that.
So if the seller has solar on their home, the first thing I ask is, do they own it? Or is it finance? If it's finance, I'd like to know where if they have their contract, so we know if it's transferable to the next homeowner or do we have to pay it off. There are various different options on their contract, so we definitely need to know what they have on the contract.
And how do you find out if the homeowner says, "Gosh, I don't know what they sold me"?
Well, we'll start off with what company did you go with?
Okay, so a little reverse engineering.
Yeah,
gotcha.
A little bit of research.
So Kimberly, when you get the phone call from an agent that says, I'm selling a property that has existing solar on it and we don't know what we're working with here, what type of advice do you give to the agent and the sellers?
Absolutely. So typically if the selling agent doesn't know if the system the homeowner doesn't know where the system came from, it was on there before, which means they don't have a lease, they don't have a loan, they own it outright. That homeowner that's selling the home will absolutely know if they're in a lease, if they got the lease themselves, if they've purchased it, or if they financed it. Most homeowners either have a lease or they financed it. We're not doing as many leases right now, so typically you just go to the homeowner and the listing agent. They will know. If they don't know, it's owned outright typically.
Gotcha. Fantastic. So Mary Ann, when you're representing the sellers and you're doing your walkthrough on the house, in regards to home repairs and plumbing issues and those types of things, what are you looking for?
Well, I typically look for, when I do my walkthrough, is any leaks in plumbing, any leaks. So I turn every faucet in the house to make sure that there's no leaks or evidence of leak previously. If there is, question that with the seller. Looking at the water heater, what's the condition, how old is it? Those are most of the typical things that I tend to look, because that's what comes up on our inspections.
So they have to document all of these types of things on your reports too then, right?
That's correct.
So at what point do you say, oh my gosh, I need to call a plumber to look at something that you may have discovered?
So I will, if I typically found something that's not in a good condition and whatnot, so that's when I talk to the seller about it. Hey, let's call so-and-so. I'll ask them if they have a specific plumber that they already use. If not, I'll give them options. So giving the seller options to where they can call and take a look at what's going on, it's much better than just telling them what to do.
Obviously. So Gary, when you get a phone call that says, hey, I've got this problem going on or this problem, do you navigate them through it and say, you know, you might be able to fix this yourself, or hey, you know what, it's time for me to come out there and take a look?
Most of the time when it has to do with water, I recommend having me come out, because if the homeowner is not comfortable with what they're doing, you can a lot of times cause more damage than good.
Oh, good point.
Yeah,
Good point. So tell us a little bit. I know Marianne works with the sellers and the buyers, and there's certain things that have to be done in order to transfer the property. And water heaters is one of the big things, right?
Yeah.
Tell us the longevity of a water heater, tankless versus non-tankless water heaters.
A regular water heater is estimated to last between 10 and 12 years. And a tankless water heater might run you about 30 years, but it really depends on how well you take care of it. Tankless water heaters need to be flushed regularly, because on the inside of them they actually have small holes that the water travels through. And as it's traveling through the holes, it gets heated up by the burners, and if those begin to clog, then you get hot spots on there. When you get hot spots, it wears out the copper really quickly.
And so a lot of these things, if somebody's been living in their house for 20 years, some codes have probably changed, right? So Marianne, you probably keep up with a lot of codes in your area. If a consumer doesn't know what to do, or what needs to be changed, or what needs to be retrofitted, how would they find out that information?
You would look up, you can call your plumber, he should know. But if you wanted to find out for yourself, you can just do a Google search for your city or your county, and then type in the words retrofit requirements or plumbing retrofit requirements.
So tell us really quickly, what's retrofit?
Okay, so retrofit means to change it, basically, to take the old and then change it to what is updated and new.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that sellers need to know before selling their property, and they rely on you guys as experts to navigate them through that process, right? Marianne, when you walk the client through the seller, are there certain things that they want to fix, or they don't want to fix, or they can push on to the buyer?
That all really depends on the condition and each situation. So the advise the seller what should be fixed to get the top dollars, or if they can't get it fixed, then note that on our disclosures. Everything has to be disclosed, so the buyer is aware of it. And so,
fantastic. Yeah. Well, I really learned a few little things here in regards to where to look for solar and how that can be transferred, and should we go the Mercedes-Benz of water heaters or not. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about when you want to buy a property that has these options on it. I am your host, Michelle Limon, and you're watching The Finest Women in Real Estate.
Hey guys, how are you today?
Good.
I'm here to talk about how with technology you can make amazing worlds. Come with me. My team and I bring the Halo world to life.
Is that you?
That is me. I wasn't a math genius and I knew nothing about coding. But you guys do. You guys have the power to change things.
I want your job.
I want you to have my job.
Opioid dependence can happen after just 5 days. Know the truth, spread the truth.
Hello and welcome back to The Finest Women in Real Estate. I'm your host, Michelle Limon, and we are talking with 3 experts that are going to help you navigate through the home buying process in regards to solar, if your property has home repairs, for plumbing and maintenance. And we're our company today with Marianne Chanthala and Kimberly Whitfield and Gary Rodgers. So Marianne, as a dual agent, like you've told us before, we talked about when you represent sellers, and now let's talk about when you represent buyers. So you're representing a buyer and they want to purchase a house that may or may not have solar on it. How do you price out or know if that house is a good deal with or without solar?
So first of all, really find out if it has solar, if it's paid for or not paid for. It's usually disclosed. If it's not disclosed, then that's when it's my job to go communicate with the other agent and find out it's owned outright, or we have to go through the lease options.
So are there some benefits, maybe Kimberly, this might actually be a question for you, are there some benefits for them to either own it or lease it? Which one is actually better for the consumer?
So that's a really good question. The best benefit used to be for most people to lease because there weren't great loan options available and most people just can't pay cash. They can't go out and buy a car and pay cash, buy a house and pay cash, buy solar and pay cash. But now that we've moved into the amazing loan options are great. You get the federal incentive, the ITC tax credit. And the one thing about the lease or owning the system, whether it's financed or owned outright, it adds value in the sense that you're avoiding that utility cost. So even if a new homeowner, and I've heard a lot of agents say, it's so funny, what's the best house to have? One without solar. Well, it's because it can be a little bit complex sometimes, but as long as you know it up front, like Marianne was saying, as long as you know what you're getting into up front, and that takes a very well and knowledgeable real estate agent to do that and to know to look for that because not all systems are owned. But whether you're going from a lease and you're transferring a lease from the old homeowner to the person that's purchasing the home, it's less than what they would pay SDG&E or PG&E or most utilities, and that's why the lease, there's so much value in the lease. And then same with the loans. The loans can very easily be transferred, and eventually you're going to own that, and the loan is typically lower because that former homeowner that's selling has put that 30% incentive into the loan, so you've got a 30% discounted solar system that you're just finishing paying off, which is still less than what you would pay your utility company for electricity. So there's huge value, whether it's owned outright or not, in that system.
So Marianne, as an agent, when you're representing a buyer that wants to make an offer on a property that has solar, there's a benefit to that because the house is probably worth a bit more because of the solar. And then even though it might be worth more and that payment's a little bit higher, the offset is the utility bill, right?
Correct. So that's one of the things that I talk about. If it has solar, they'll benefit from the low utilities. They may or may not even pay utility bills monthly. Well, they don't pay monthly. It's a yearly for electricity. They pay monthly for their gas. But again, utility is so much cheaper having the solar.
And there's a couple different options for solar, right? There's lease and buy, and you can put it in your payment or you can put it in your property taxes, I think is another option too, right?
The hero loans, yeah.
Ah, okay. Mm-hmm. Well, fantastic. And then when you help the buyers purchase and they have now become homeowners and they are no longer a landlord to call on for repairs and something goes wrong in their plumbing, at some point we've got to call Gary and say, should I try this on my own or is it time to really call an agent, a plumber? So you've got a couple plumbers I'm sure that you work with, and you, at that point when the transaction's closed, do you kind of just say, you're a homeowner, welcome to homeownership, or do you still guide them down that path?
I still guide them that part. They typically would call me and say, all of my clients get a 1 year or 13 months a home warranty. So they are aware of that, just depending on what the situation is. So they'll let me know what the situation is and I'll give them advice whether I think it's way too much or too little. Go call your home warranty or go call the local handyman plumbing to fix it for you.
So you probably get a lot of these types of calls from new homeowners panicking. They're like, I just had a new baby, what do I do? So you get these phone calls, and how do you walk these new homeowners, inexperienced homeowners through a catastrophe that may have just happened?
It kind of depends on the situation, but the first thing that I would lead them to is how to shut their water off at their house. So that's very important. And then I kind of, depending on the situation, I'll walk them through it. I'll tell them where their valves are, what they could possibly do to remedy the situation, and then I'll try to get out there as soon as I can to help them.
And so you can come out there and do that 24/7, or plumbers can get out there when water's involved. It could cause a lot of damage, right?
Yeah, definitely. Especially if you can't shut the water off. One important thing is to make sure that your whole house shutoff valve is functional. So,
and where do most people find that whole house shutoff valve?
You'll find that where your hose bib is on the outside. It's either going to be on the outside of the wall there or on the inside, and it'll look like a small handle that's either round or a lever that you pull up or push down.
So typically when you encounter new homeowners that have just moved into their home or recently moved in, what are some typical repairs that seem to come up?
It could be changing out toilets or installing new faucets. It just kind of depends. A I have gone into homes and just replaced every single toilet in the place because they were having issues, and I don't know how it didn't come up earlier in the buying process, but yeah.
So what advice would you give a home buyer to and a realtor to say, maybe these things need to be changed out and negotiated through the buying process so the homeowner, when they move in, those types of things are already done? What are some things that the seller should take care of and the homeowner should say, I'd rather maybe not do those things myself?
Oh, make sure that your pressure's okay on the house. Make sure that the water heater's strapped and everything's good with the water heater. That's going to be one of the biggest expenses with plumbing, is going to be the water heater.
The water heater and the shut-off valve and anything else they might be able to do themselves, or they're going to need to call a plumber.
A lot of times I would recommend calling a plumber, maybe with repairing a toilet or something like that, just with what's in the back. Just make sure that the water's shut off. That's very important.
It never fails, right? When you first move in, something's going to go wrong, but water can cause even more damages from there too.
Absolutely, and I've been at homes before to where the valve didn't work on the house, and then the valve at the street the city maintains also didn't work, so there was absolutely no way to shut that water off.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So you're doing a home inspection or like a visual inspection with the buyer when you're walking through. I'm assuming you guys are looking for those types of things to get repaired, right?
Oh, absolutely. I do my visual inspections with them, and that's during the physical inspection by a professional too. So we have the buyers hire a professional inspection that runs through the whole house, and after that they go do the summary, we'll go through the report, and I always typically pick out a lot of the plumbing. If the plumbing issues are up there, we'll definitely look into that.
So the homeowners will have the option to have an inspector come out and look at all of these things, and what advice do you give them if they say, gosh, I don't want to pay for that expense?
Well, as for the buyer, I walk them through and take a look at what's really important, what's that needs to be fixed by the sellers. We can always ask, we never know what the seller would do, but I give them options too, either to fix the problem, or give us a credit. So sometimes giving that credit is much easier for the seller because they don't have time to do anything.
Gotcha.
So giving be reasonable when you're asking for a request. So giving them options to fix it, or give the buyer credit.
So if something has to be fixed through escrow and they're electing not to give the credit, Gary, you would come in and you would fix all of these repairs before the homeowner purchases the property at no expense to the buyer then, right?
Someone has to pay me.
Well, the seller would do that, right?
Yeah.
And then you hold out and wait to get that payment through escrow. Is that typically how they would get paid, or does the homeowner pay them right then?
I'm normally paid right away.
Right away.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, I've learned a few things about what to do and not to do on my own, and how solar can be transferred. If you guys need some more information about these types of things, please reach out to these professionals. That's what they're here for. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to learn the tips and the tricks that we need to know before buying and selling. I'm Michelle Limon, your host of The Finest Women in Real Estate. Don't go away, because when we come back, we're going to have some great information for you.
Put the keys down, Kevin.
But I'm gonna drive home.
There are several warning signs present that you shouldn't be driving.
My text to emoji ratio has gotten a little out of hand.
A little?
Yep, I'm definitely gonna call a ride home.
First time I tried Vicodin, and it was laying around my mom's house. I didn't know they'd be this addictive. I didn't know how far I'd go to get more.
Opioid dependence can happen after just 5 days. Know the truth, spread the truth.
Hi, welcome back to The Finest Women in Real Estate. I'm your host, Michelle Limon, and we're going to give you our final tips and tricks that you need to know when buying and selling. And Marianne, give us your last few recommendations of why buyers and sellers need to come to you for all of your experience.
So that's a great question. So for my sellers, I take a look at what their different options of if they finance their solar. We'll take a look at, is the paying it off going to give them more money back? Is it worth it? Or can we pass that over to the buyers? So they'll take in more money. So just depending on what the situation is, we'll go over that. As for the buyers, having solar is going to be very beneficial for them to have a low utility bill.
Yeah, because you know, our utility bill here locally in San Diego, we've got peak time and super peak time, and these prices are getting crazy. So solar is going to be the way to go, right?
Right. So just giving them some educations on that.
In regards to that. Well, thank you so much. And Kimberly, give us your best pieces of information in regards to why consumers really should consider more of solar.
Absolutely. So just like you all were saying, that the rates here are in California, but everywhere, rates never go down. So solar and in California, it's mandatory that everyone will have to be renewable, not necessarily the homeowners, but that means if the homeowners don't have solar, it's in the hands of the utility, and so you're paying more. So everyone that's buying a home, you want to, both the agent and the buyer, they really want to look at the roof. So look to make sure you have a southern exposure roof or a western exposure roof. Those are going to be best for the peak time of use rate, the way they charge the electricity rates, and make sure that home is going to be a viable option for solar, because even if it's not something you want to do in the next year, next 2 years, if you're going to be in that home, I'm telling you, when you start seeing your bills, you're going to want to look at solar, and you're walking into savings, whether you finance it, and of course it's a very short payback period if you do pay cash for it.
And I know that's true, because these prices are going from peak time to super peak time, and I feel like I'm getting penalized if I don't have solar by paying those higher fees to compensate for all the people that do have solar that the utility companies aren't making money off of.
You probably are.
So Gary, tell us what home sellers and homeowners need to know the most in regards to repairs and plumbing and things like that they need to take into consideration before selling and buying.
Okay, definitely keep track of the pressure. You don't want that pressure to be over 70 psi. That'll cause further problems down the line. It'll put holes in your pipes. Your plumbing appliances aren't meant to handle over 70 psi. Another thing that I would say is to make sure that there's no plumbing fixture that's constantly running water. Common perpetrators of this are like your toilets, and that can actually dump a lot of money literally down the drain. And then another thing I would do is I would look underneath the sinks of the homes that you're buying, and I would look at the valves underneath the sink, because that can kind of give you an idea of the conditions of the pipes that are inside the wall. That's the closest thing that you have right there. And finally, I would say if you can afford it, to invest in a water softener, because that'll protect your plumbing system in the long run.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, I really appreciate all of you guys coming out and helping out our consumers and giving them all this information that they need to know. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to tune in next time for all of our future episodes.